Good day, everyone. This is lesson number 4 of Learning TradeStation. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education here at TradeStation. It'll be a pleasure for me to host and present the content of this class. Welcome, everyone. Learning TradeStation is an educational program that is divided in 12 unique lessons. You can check out the schedule right there on the screen. Today is January 15th. We're doing lesson number 4. The title of this lesson is Chart Analysis, Bar Building Techniques, and Chart Styles. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the topics that we're going to discuss today by showing you the first page of the PDF. Here it is. If you don't have access to the PDF, it's located at the bottom right corner of the player. There's a folder there. Let me highlight it for everyone right there. And I'm also going to share the link to the PDF in the chat so that you can see the PDF there as well. Okay. Some of the topics we're going to cover today are, of course, chart analysis windows, as the main title says. We're going to format symbols. We're going to change or show you how to change the symbol, how to change the bar interval, and how to adjust the range of chart analysis. We're going to explain the differences between a time chart, an activity chart, and a price chart. They're all different, and the analysis of all those different charts, of course, is going to help you in the analysis of the markets. A little bit about historical data, how to change the style of a symbol, talk about open, high, low, close bars, talk a little bit about candlesticks, show you how to adjust the price scale on the chart analysis, which is something very useful. We'll talk about properties of symbols, how to adjust trading sessions if you want to play around with the times that a particular symbol is traded. Of course, you can't change the times that they're traded, but you can change the way that they're displayed on the screen. And I'll show you how to do that. And last but not least, we'll talk about background dragging and how you can use that functionality to maneuver and get around the chart. Okay. I do see that somebody posted that they're having issues with sound. Just wanted to make sure that you can hear me. If the class can hear me, just give me a little text confirmation. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everyone, for confirming. Phil, Rob, David, thank you for joining me in class. So I guess it's just an isolated case. We should probably let Clarence know that sometimes closing out of the room and getting back in resolves a lot of the issues. All right. We're all aware of the chat at the bottom left. Feel free to submit any comments or any questions about the content that I'm presenting today. I'll be glad to clarify any topics. You just need to let me know if you need me to elaborate more on a particular topic. Just be mindful that everybody will see your comments and everybody will see your questions, which is a benefit to the class because sometimes you may think of something that somebody else may not have thought of. So the chat is very useful to add a little bit more information and a little bit more dynamics to the class. If you're unable to get the PDF, for some reason, sometimes you have security software that blocks the download of PDFs, and so send me an email and I'll send you the PDF over email. But I guess you can also go to the archives. Let me show you the link to the archives. I'm sharing the link on the chat. That is the link that takes you to the current archive of this class, Learning TradeStation. We currently don't have the new videos, but you can go there and open up lesson number 4, the one that we're doing today, and the PDF is available as a download link right over there. So that's another way to get the PDF. If you're still unable to get the content, just send me an email and I'll be glad to send you the PDF as an attachment to an email, okay? This presentation is being recorded. So in a couple of weeks after we complete the whole series by the end of the month, we're going to go in production mode. I'm going to produce all the videos, edit some of the pieces, and then upload them and replace the ones that are currently there. So it'll take us some time to to have the new videos on the archive page. So I do appreciate everybody's patience as we get all these videos ready and uploaded to that website. Keep in mind that the following presentation is for educational purposes only. Every symbol and idea that we present here is for educational purposes only. They are not recommendations of TradeStation. And also keep in mind that online trading is not suitable for everyone. If you need more information about the risks that are associated with online trading, we have 2 documents in the documents folder that I'm going to share links in the chat, which is the important disclosures document PDF and also the characteristics and risks of standardized options document. All right. Theodora, to answer your question about the frequency in which we do these classes, we always try to do these at least once every quarter or every 6 months, just to make sure that we refresh the content. See, Learning TradeStation, the content is pretty much the same. We just refresh it just in case there's new functionality and we want to update the videos. But the archive videos are pretty current as well. So if you watch the videos that are there currently, you're going to get good information about TradeStation and how to use it. But we do them like twice every year just to make sure that we have a refresh of the content. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to jump over here to my TradeStation. All right. Yesterday's class and the one before yesterday were concentrated on trading order entries. I'm going to close out of some of the bars here on top just to maximize the space in my desktop area. So I just X them out and I just have a clean workspace that we're going to start with. The first thing is give you a little tour of chart analysis. Let's go here to the Trading Apps Launcher. We already know that in order for you to create a chart, you have to come up here and click on Chart Analysis. I did show you a couple other ways in which you can create a chart. Like if you remember, we also added a toolbar button that would create charts every time you clicked on it. So we talked about that. And there's other ways in which you can create a chart. But for the most part, we're going to come here to the trading apps and click on Chart Analysis. The charts in TradeStation, they'll remember the last symbol you used. So on my TradeStation, the last symbol that I used was CAR, car, which is the symbol for Avis budget. So this is the car rental. So we see the chart for that particular stock. And it'll also remember or default to a 5-minute chart. You can see there on the top left. Okay, so I'm going to resize the window so that it covers the whole screen. And you can see that my chart also comes up as a candlestick chart, which I believe is the default now of TradeStation. For many years, TradeStation was using open, high, low, close bars, but we're going to get to that in a little moment as we go through the content here on the PDF. We're going to start off with just giving you a little bit of geography here on the chart. On the right-hand side, we see the price scale. The price scale on the right is automatically adjusted. So you see it's going to take the highest point on the chart, and it's going to take the lowest point on the chart, whatever data is available on the chart, and that's going to determine the lowest price on the price scale and the highest price on the price scale. All right, very, very straightforward, and is automatically adjusted to whatever data it's on the screen. You also see here on the price scale a highlighted price, which is the current price. You'll see the current price highlighted there in green or red, depending on the color of the current candle. At the top of the chart, you see some useful information. For example, the exchange where the symbol is traded. You see the last traded price, the net change, the percent change, bid and ask information, the open, the high, and the low, and you see volume. All these data points that you see here get updated in real time. Now for this class, it's my preference to bump up the font so it's easier on the eyes, especially when you're watching a class like this. Let me show you how you can modify the font and some of the styling here of the chart. For this, I'm going to double-click on the background. So double-click here on the background. It'll take you to this dialog titled Format Window. it'll give you an opportunity to change a lot of the things of the chart. One of those is the font. You have status line, which is that line that I referred to, the one that's on top of the chart. That is the status line. And you have the axis labels. The axis labels is the y-axis and the x-axis numbers. So you have the prices on the right, and you have the time at the bottom. I want to change the font of everything. So first of all, I'll highlight status line, make it bold, and I'll make it a 10. So it's a little bit bigger. Not that big, but a little bit bigger. And the same for the axis labels. I'll highlight the axis labels and make them 10. And if I want the chart analysis to remember those settings, I have to put a check here where it says set as default. Otherwise, it'll revert back to the default size and font. So make sure that if you make changes to the chart and you want to continue to use those styles and settings, make sure you put a check there and set as default. I'll click OK. And now you can see how it's a little bit bigger and bolder. Perfect. Another thing that I wanted to show you. We have a watermark here in the chart. Gives you the name of the symbol and also some interesting information like the name of the corporation that stands behind the symbol. One thing that I did want to explain, let me see if there's a page here that talks about the status line. I don't think there's a specific page that talks about the status line, but I'll mention it here. If you want to modify the data that's on the top, because you do have access to modifying some of the data pieces that show up here. Maybe you want to remove some of the pieces there because they're not important to you and you think that there's way too much information up there. Maybe the chart is a little bit smaller. Like for example, if I make my chart smaller, some of the information on the status line may not be visible. So right here, I made the chart small. I don't see volume. Maybe volume is something important to you. So you want to bring it over closer to the symbol. In order for you to modify the data that's over there, we're going to go to Format, Window again. And the shortcut to Format Window is double-clicking on the background. Now, be careful that, just keep in mind that if you double-click on your chart, if you double-click on the background, it'll take you to Format Window. But let me show you what happens if I double-click on the candles. If you double-click on the candles, it takes you to a totally different formatting dialog, which is the format symbol. So be careful where you double-click on because it may take you somewhere else. If you want to format the status line, we need to go to Format Window. So I double-click on the background. I go to my Status Line tab. And the first thing is a checkbox for Show Status Line. So you can just go ahead and remove that line altogether if you don't need it. Okay, it's on by default. Some of the changes you make here are viewed at the bottom. There's a preview at the bottom that allows you to see how it changes as you make additional changes here on top. But you can remove some of the indications. The indications are the little boxes that you see here on the top left corner. Usually you don't see any indications on the chart. For example, for car, I don't see any indications. But sometimes you're going to find indications and you're going to try to figure out what it means. Like SA. SA, if you look here on top, it means strategy automation. So if you have a strategy on the chart, you're going to see an SA on the chart. If you see a little C in orange, like over here in the preview, that's a correction. You know, if the data gets corrected by the exchange, and it happens, you know, I would say it doesn't happen frequently, but once in a while you get a data correction. So the exchange says that there's a bad tick. It sends a correction. We receive that correction on the data server, and we'll send that correction over to your chart. And if you see that C on your chart, you will know that there's a correction that needs to be applied. What do? You can just right-click on any of these indicators and you'll get a whole menu of options. So if you do see a little C on the top left corner of the chart, right-click on it, and it'll give you an option to apply that correction. Perfect. You can also add and remove. In the available box, you see everything that is available in the current status line. If you want to, actually no, let me take that back. Available is everything you can add to the status line. Everything that is selected here on the right-hand side is currently displayed in the status line. So if I wanted to remove the bid and ask information because it's not relevant to me, I can just remove it, and then click OK. And you see how the bid and ask is removed from my status line. All right. In TradeStation, you can create as many chart analysis as you need. There's no limitation on the platform. We're not going to tell you you can only open 30 charts, because that's not the case. You can open as many charts as you need to follow, and the only limitation will be the resources on your computer. So the more charts you open in TradeStation, of course, you're going to be using system resources like memory and processing speed. So the more you have open, of course, the more you're going to use of your computer. So it's going to get to a point that your computer may start running out of system resources, and you start seeing your TradeStation act up on you. If that happens, then it may be time to to backtrack and say, do I need everything that I'm looking at open concurrently? Because sometimes you may be able to close some things that you're not following at the moment and only concentrate on the stuff that you are. Because sometimes we have so many things open that TradeStation then starts, having a hard time breathing and responding in your computer. Okay, just keep that in mind. But there's no limit to the number of chart analysis you can open in TradeStation. Good. Another couple of components that I wanted to point out here on the graph. We see some vertical lines. These are dotted lines that let you know when the session breaks. If I look here on the beginning or the right-hand side of the chart, I see current data. In fact, if you look at the 2590, you see how that is the current price, but it's updating in real time. See, it just moved to 29 or 2591 and then in 2589. You see the bars or the candles for the current day, and that vertical line that I was pointing to earlier, that is the beginning of the session. And if you look at the line before that, that is the beginning of the session yesterday. So visually, you can see these vertical lines that give you very nice visual markers of when the day begins and when the day ends. The session breaks can be modified. If you think you can make them a little bit thicker, if you want to change the color of those lines just to make them more relevant, you can do so. Where do you find that? Well, same format window. So double click on the background. You go to the Style tab, and here's the checkbox for session breaks. See, it's called session breaks. You can change the style of the line. You can change the weight of the line. And if you wanted to change the color, just go to the Color tab. In the Color tab, you'll find every single item to which you can change the color, including session breaks. So session breaks, if I want to make them a little bit lighter, let's do this gray, just a little bit lighter, and then click OK. Remember, if you want that to be the default, put a check here set as default, because if you don't, when it comes to create a new chart, it'll go back to the old settings. So if you want that color to be used going forward, set as default. I click OK, and you can see how my session breaks changed color. They're a little bit more, they have a brighter color. Perfect. If you don't see session breaks, it may be because of the time of the chart. We'll take a look at some things that, and we'll play around with the chart just to see how you can maneuver in the chart. One of the good features of chart analysis in TradeStation is that you can also use the keyboard to control the chart. For example, if I press my left arrow, you can see that I can shift my chart to the left. I'm just pressing my left arrow on my keyboard. And if I press the right arrow, I move the chart to the right. So something to keep in mind. If you press the up arrow, notice what happens. Up arrow on the keyboard expands the candles, and it gives you more space between the candles if you want to expand and see more detail on the chart. And the down on the down arrow on the keyboard does the opposite. It compresses the candles and removes the space between the bars so you can see more of history. So play around with the up arrow and the down arrow keys on the keyboard because it'll allow you to expand and compress the chart. Richard has a question about reverting TradeStation defaults after you change. It'd be great to have like a reset to factory defaults or something. We don't have that on TradeStation. So if you make a change, a default, there's no way to go back to what it was before unless you change the default again. And sometimes you may have forgotten what the default was. So the only way that you can get TradeStation to be the way that it was when you first installed it is by uninstalling and reinstalling. All right. Let's talk about other things here. Let's talk about changing the symbol. I think in the last previous sessions I showed you how to change the symbol. Um, I like using the keyboard because I feel that it's a shortcut to a lot of the changes that I do to the chart. I'm looking at car right now, but if I wanted to change the symbol, I just type it in. MSFT. We probably already noticed that every time that you use the keyboard, that information is going to go up here inside the command line. You can see the symbol up there, MSFT. So as soon as you type in the symbol and you press the Enter key on the keyboard, you see how the chart changes to that symbol. And it doesn't matter what asset class you trade. You can just type in any symbol. So from a stock symbol, I can type in ESH16, which is a futures, hit Enter, and I'm looking at a futures symbol. And if I'm looking at Forex, EURUSD, hit Enter, and then I'm looking at Forex on this screen. So it's just an on-demand. Type in the symbol, change the symbol. Now, another thing that you may want to do is change the time interval. See, right here we have a 5-minute chart, and that's a default on TradeStation. But if you wanted to change the time interval, I did show you a little button here on the toolbar, which is called the interval, the one that I'm on right now. If you click on it, you get a drop-down with all different types of time intervals that you can select from the drop-down. But you can also use the keyboard. I like the keyboard a lot. So let me show you a trick here in TradeStation. While you're in a minute interval, which we are in a 5-minute chart, TradeStation charting only requires a number and the Enter key to change to that time interval. Let me give you an example. If I wanted to change that chart to 10 minutes, I just type in the number 10. You can see the number 10 up here in the command line, and I hit Enter, and it changes to 10 minute. If I wanted a 60 minute, I type in 60, hit Enter. Now I'm looking at a 60-minute chart. So it's very simple for you to change the time interval, especially minute, by just typing a number and hitting Enter. Now let me show you how to change the interval to something like a daily. From a 60-minute, I can just type in the word daily, and literally I just type in the word daily up here, and I hit Enter, and it changes my chart to a daily interval. Now look at my chart. You see all those little arrows, the red arrows and the blue arrows? Your chart may look like this. Mine looks like that because I've traded the euro dollar a lot on this simulator, and sometimes it looks cluttered. So if you want to clean your chart and remove all that trading activity, I can do that by right-clicking on one of the arrows and then disable account orders and positions. And then it removes all that trading activity. It's just displaying trading activity or historical trading activity. That information is on by default. If you don't want to see that on the chart for good and you want to turn it off for all charts going forward because you find it annoying, then do the following. Right-click, go to Format, Account Orders and Positions, which is what that is called. It's just getting your orders and positions on the chart. And right now the status is turned off. You can see how the checkbox is clear, but at the bottom there's a setting that says automatically enable account orders and positions on new chart analysis windows and for new data series. So if this is a feature that you don't like, you can come here and uncheck it so that it doesn't show on the screen, and then click OK. And Vincent, you can change the chart to any minute interval. He's asking if you can change it to a 36-minute. Yes, most definitely. Right now I have the euro dollar, and if you look over here, I have a daily chart. So I can't just type in a number, but I can type in this number, 36 space MIN. So once you are on a daily interval or something that is not minute, you do have to add the word or the abbreviation MIN so that TradeStation understands that the 36 is a time interval. So 36 space MIN. That's what you see on top. I hit Enter, And now this is a 36-minute of the euro dollar. Hun, your question is how do we show a chart of a call spread? Interesting question. We don't have symbols that represent a spread. So in order for you to actually chart the spread, you need to bring in the two symbols into the chart and then create a difference of them. We're going to talk about multi-data charts tomorrow. Not tomorrow, tomorrow's Saturday, so we're not doing a class tomorrow. We're doing a class on Tuesday. Monday's a holiday, so Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. we do a technical analysis class where we talk about multi-data analysis, and it'll give us an example. It'll give us an opportunity to show you how to bring in multiple symbols on the graph, okay? Great. So we talked about changing the symbol. We talked about changing the data interval. If I wanted to see a weekly chart of the euro dollar, I just type in the word weekly. You see weekly up here on the data, on the command line. I hit enter, and this is a weekly chart of the euro dollar. All right. Now let me go back to Microsoft, and let me go back to 5-minute. I'm just using the keyboard to do those changes. And as you play around with your TradeStation, you're going to find that the keyboard is very straightforward to make those changes. Now, if I look at my Microsoft chart and I scroll back, I see that I only have a few days of historical data. It doesn't load much data. In fact, let me show you how to find out the exact date. You can glance over here at the time scale. You can see that this is the date, 1/11, January 11th. Over here we have January 12th. So I can only assume that this data over here is January 10th, if it's not a weekend. TradeStation allows you to view details about the candles that you see on the screen by clicking on the background and holding the mouse button. So everyone click on the background and hold your mouse button, and you can move your mouse as you're holding the button, and this gives you a data tips window. We call this the data tips because it gives you information on the candle where the axis is located, the x-axis. So you can move that x-axis all the way to the very beginning of the graph, and it tells you that the date on this bar is January 8th. That's the exact date. You can see the time too, 9:35 a.m. And you can see information on that first bar, the open, high, low, and close, and volume. And this is available for every chart. So this chart only goes back to January 8th. What if I wanted to load more data? If I wanted to load from the beginning of last year, can I do that? Of course you can. TradeStation has an extensive historical database that it's on demand, and it just requires you to put in a request for data, and TradeStation will download the data for you. Let's give you an example. I'm going to type in, using my keyboard, 1 year. Misspelled that. You see on the very top, I see a command line. It says 1 year. I hit enter, and TradeStation will provide me with this download scheduler. When you request a historical data, and this is a feature that is available or explained, let me see, because it is a part of the PDF. On page 7 of the PDF, it talks about this download scheduler. Every time you bring up a chart in TradeStation, it's going to download the default amount of data, whatever that default is. I think when you load a 5-minute chart, it has 5 days of data. If you load a daily chart, it gives you 2 years of data. So every time interval has a default amount of data. But sometimes you need more. I just typed in here 1 year, and the download scheduler comes up because this is a way of managing your data downloads. You may want to do it off-peak hours because you don't want to use up your resources downloading data when you are watching the markets in real time. Or maybe you want to do it as soon as possible if you want the data right now. If you look at the top left corner, you can see that there's a PD on the chart. It's just represents pending data. And until the chart is fully loaded, you're going to see that PD on the top left. Once the download is complete, the PD will disappear. But I'm just going to click OK. The PD remains here on the top left, and we're just going to give the chart a few seconds to load 1 year of historical data. It is a lot of data. You can see how the PD just went away, but now if I scroll back on my chart, I see that I have more data. I look at the day here, and if I click on the background and I hold my mouse button, put the axis right here on the very first bar, take a look at the top of that data tips. January 15th, 2015. So we have 1 year worth of data on a 5-minute interval for Microsoft. And you can play around with the historical data. We have years and years of intraday data. I believe for Microsoft, we can load 30 or 40 years of historical data. I'm not sure how much data there is. But at any point, you can load that much data on the chart. So, changing the symbol, changing the bar interval, and changing the historical data. We showed you how to do commands using the keyboard, and it's easy to do. If you wanted to do any of these changes through the menu, we go to Format Symbol. Now, we talked about Format Window, which is double-clicking on the background. When I say Format Symbol, we're going to double-click on the candles themselves, or the bars themselves. So I'm going to double-click on the candle. It takes me to this dialog titled Format Symbol. And on the Settings tab is where you do the symbol change, the historical request, and also the time interval. So this is the menu way, not the shortcut. The menu way, you can do the same things. Here you can change the symbol on top. You can select the time interval from any of the ones that are listed here. And then you can do the range, historical data. See, right now we do 1 year back. But you can do a last date and first date. You can do bars back. You can do all sorts of things to specify how much data you need. Just keep in mind that last date must be the current date in order for your chart to update in real time. If you change the last date to something that is not today's date, the chart will be a historical chart. It will not receive any real-time updates. So just keep that in mind if you want the chart to receive real-time updates. All right. Let's continue here. Douglas, I see your question about issues with TradeStation 9.5. I haven't seen any issues. I've been using 9.5 for a long time already. I would, ask that question to our technical support department, and they'll be able to tell you what the current issues are. So that would be a discussion with them. And Phil, your question about what is a reasonable of historical data on 5 minute, it all depends on what you're trying to do. Sometimes if you're doing analysis and you need historical data and you want to test an idea against different market behavior, you're going to need historical data for that, especially if you're doing a back test or you're doing a trading strategy. The data is there for you to back test and analyze your idea against different market behavior. Stephanie, your question, is there a historical data limit or charge? No. The data is available on the server. Of course, for some symbols, we may not have data from the beginning or from the inception of that stock, but give it a try. If you say, give me 100 years of data for Microsoft, well, you know that Microsoft has not been in business for 100 years, but if you request 100 years, actually you won't be able to, because I think the maximum is 90. If you request 90 years, it'll just give you whatever it's available on the server. So if you want to max your chart out, you can do that by just requesting the maximum, which is 90 years, okay? And that's something you can do. You can also, you see, if I change my chart, and I'll do that right now, to $INDU, this is something that you'll find interesting. I'm going to do as soon as possible. This is $INDU. I'm going to change the chart to a monthly chart by just typing the word monthly. You can see it there on the command line. This is the monthly chart of the Dow Jones. And I'm going to say, give me 90 years of data. I'm just typing it in up here, 90 years. And there we go. If I scroll back on this chart, scroll back, scroll back, scroll back, you can see how the data goes back to the 1920s. You can see the big crash of 1929 and the effect it had on the market. And you can analyze different segments of the data by just loading the Dow Jones back into the 1920s. It's a very interesting concept. All right. Okay, let's talk about other types of graph. And Vincent, as your question about changing, when you say changing the name, I believe you want to change the symbol. Yes, you can just use the keyboard to change the symbol. And Atul, your question is data adjusted for dividends and splits? Yes, the data is automatically adjusted for any dividends or any splits that happen on the history of any stock. Let's go ahead and talk about activity-based intervals. So I'm going to switch over to Microsoft and switch it to 5-minute. We have in TradeStation time-based intervals. Those are the ones that are on page 3 of the PDF. We have the minute data, daily, weekly, monthly. We also have seconds data. I'm not sure if you were aware of this, but if I type in here and I say, give me a 45-second, I can just type in 45 space SEC, hit enter, and it creates a 45-second bar. If you want a 10-second bar, just type in 10, hit enter, and this is a 10-second bar. We get a new bar every 10 seconds. You can go down to the 1 second and get a 1-second bar for any stock. So second intervals or seconds interval is available in TradeStation. Interesting concept. But all the ones that are listed here on page 3 are all time-based. All the bars have the same time element, the same time period. Let's talk about activity, which are the ones on page 4. Activity bars are the ones that are based on, as the name implies, activity. If I format the symbol, I'm going to double-click on one of the candles. The two time intervals that we have are tick and volume. Tick and volume. What is the difference? Well, tick will count the number of transactions, how many trades there are. And volume will count the amount of shares that are traded or the amount of contracts that are traded. So two different ways of looking at volume. So I'm going to come here to tick and say, give me a 1,000 tick bar. For Microsoft, a 1,000 tick bar means that every time that Microsoft trades 1,000 times, that is going to build a bar. The current bar over here that we see on the far right is building based on transactions. Once it reaches that 1,000 transactions, it'll close the candle and go to the next one. Let me mix this with volume. I'm going to go to the Insert menu, click on Indicator. By the way, the Analysis Techniques class is on Tuesday. This is just for you to give you an indication of what volume does. So I'm going to go to Indicator. I'm going to scroll down to my volume indicators. I'm going to choose just regular volume. Okay, and I'm going to change the volume thickness here so it's a little bit nicer on the eyes. I'm going to make it thicker, change the default. We'll talk about analysis techniques tomorrow. Not tomorrow, tomorrow's Saturday. I keep on saying tomorrow. It's Tuesday. All right, so here at the bottom of my screen I have volume. You can see right here the number of shares traded. Now we are building a 1,000 tick bar, so it's counting transactions. But the volume indicator at the bottom is not counting transactions, it's counting number of shares traded. You can see that it's 43,000 on the current bar. Let's go ahead and change volume or the way that TradeStation is reading volume. If I double click on the symbol, and then this is interesting functionality, I'm going to double click on any of the candles, just go to Format Symbol, and look over here on the right, it says for volume use, trade volume. And if I go to this drop down, there's two settings. There's tick count or trade volume. Currently, if you look at the volume behind me, that's using trade volume. It's counting the number of shares. But if I go to tick count and I click OK, take a look at my volume indicator. It's like a flat line on top. Why? Because every bar His exact number of ticks. It's 1,000 ticks. And that's why they're all up here at the 1,000 marker on the right-hand side. But having it this way, you can see how the volume builds. And we are at 905, right? 905, 919 trades. You can see how close is the bar to closing. Once we reach 1,000, it closes and it goes to the next one. So it's an interesting concept. Now let me show you another type of activity chart. I'm going to come over here to format symbol again, and I'm going to say instead of counting ticks, I'm going to go to volume and say give me a 1 million share bar. Every time that Microsoft trades 1 million shares, I want to build a bar. I'm going to click OK. And click OK. And here it is. This is what's happening. You see the bars building? The marker here goes up to 1 million. We have an anomaly here. At the very first bar, see at the very first bar, it traded over 4 million shares. But this is because it's the opening of the market. We cannot split trades. So even though we asked for bars to be built on a 1 million share, we cannot separate trades. So if there's a trade for over 1 million shares, that has to be kept on the same bar, and that's why this first bar is over 4 million. But if I go over here, you can see how the number here starts building up. Right now it's 971,000 shares. When it reaches 1 million, then it starts again from the very beginning. The same as I did before, if I wanted to change the way that volume is read, I just format the symbol, go to my volume setting and say tick count. Because I'm counting number of shares here, I should count number of transactions at the bottom, and I'm going to click OK. So here, on this chart, I look at the number of transactions that are occurring at the bottom. So if I'm analyzing volume, I can say that it takes about 5,000 trades to reach 1 million shares traded. So when you think about volume and you're starting to analyze, you can do that. You can say that conclusion. But volume, or the volume indicator, can be formatted and it can be adjusted so that you can display either the tick count or the number of shares traded. Richard, your question, can the chart show me dividend dates and prices? Yes, it sure can. There's some indicators in TradeStation that allow you to see some fundamental data, dividends and earnings, and you can see that on a historical basis. So we'll talk about that tomorrow when we get to that information. All right. We have another type of charts that are the price-based. If you look on your PDF, pages 5, 6, 5 and 6. Pages 5 and 6 will give you a description on some of the price-based charts. Let me go ahead and clean my chart from this indicator. I'm just going to click on the volume indicator, delete it. I'm going to go back to a 5-minute chart. This is a 5-minute chart of Microsoft. If I go to the format symbol dialog, you're going to see some intervals right below this horizontal line. All the ones that are below this horizontal line are considered price intervals. Price intervals do not count time. They do not count volume. They're only based on price movement. So if your objective is to just filter price movement and don't take into consideration time or volume, these are great charts to look at. Because of time, we're just going to look at a couple of examples, and I'll show you how these are read. Let me give you, for example, the Kagi line. I'm going to select Kagi. It's set to 0.5, which is the reversal. I'll explain the reversal in a moment, but it's 50 cents reversal, and it's using tick data, which is fine. Let's go ahead and click OK to this. And this is the chart that loads. Now what's going on here? This is just a line that extends up and down. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening here right now. You see how the line is red? at the current moment is red. Why is it red? Because if you take a look, it went below a previous low. So whenever the line goes below a previous low, it turns red. When it goes above a previous high, for example, right here, you see how the line went above a previous high, the line turns green. So this is the line that is switching between red and green based on crossing a previous high or a previous low. It also takes into account a reversal. If you remember, we saw the reversal was 50 cents. So if you look at the current activity, at one point, Microsoft was all the way down here, where that extreme line is. It's currently where the arrow is. That's the current price of Microsoft. So it's reversing from its minimum right here. It's reversing. If it reaches the reversal amount, which is that reddish line right there, that's 50 cents. Once it reaches 50 cents of reversal, the line will change direction and it'll start moving up. Interesting concept, right? This is not time. This is not activity. It's just looking at price. If the price doesn't do anything, the chart will not do anything either. All right, let's look at another example. I'm going to double click on this line and let's look at, for example, range. Range is a popular price-based chart. This is the range chart. I'm going to set it to 50 cents to 50 cent range. I'm going to click OK. This is my 50 cent range chart of Microsoft, which means that it's looking for the bar or the candle to reach a 50 cent range. All the candles that I see here historically are candles that have a 50 cent range. How do I know? Well, I can confirm that by just clicking on the background and holding my mouse button. If you look at the price data, if you look at the high and the low, you see the difference between the high and the low, the high being 51.80 and the low is 51.30 is exactly 50 cents. If I look at the range of the current bar, I can see the high is 51.28, the low is 50.87. So we're talking about 41 cents. The current candle is 41 cents range. The data will continue to build this candle until it reaches a range of 50 cents. If that takes, 5 minutes, that's how long the bar or the candle is going to build. But if it takes 3 days or 4 weeks, that's how long the candle is going to take. So these types of charts filter out a lot of the noise that happens in the market when you have those small up and down movement in the market that are not significant. These types of charts, you're just filtering price movement, and the chart will only move if it meets the price movement that you specified. Nayan, I see your question about charting the VWAP. And yes, you can. I'm not sure if VWAP is one of the default indicators here. I know that for a long time it was not, and I think it still is not. Although I do know that the VWAP is an indicator that you can find in the Trading App Store. So go to the Trading App Store and you can get a copy of the VWAP and bring it over here to your TradeStation. Yes, it can be charted. Okay. So looking at the different types of charts that we have, let's go back here to format symbol. You got volume charts. Volume are very interesting concepts because the chart is sensitive to activity. So when the market is active, you are going to get more bars. So if you're following technical analysis, your technical analysis will calculate more often because there's more activity, and it'll slow down in those moments of the day where there's not much activity. So interesting concept. The time-based, every bar is exactly the same time. So you're sampling the data at exactly the same time, and these are very useful for a lot of back testing and analysis of strategies. And then you have the price movement. Don't care about time, don't care about activity. What I'm looking for is for the price to move. You can use a combination of different charts. So you don't have to marry a particular chart type. You can do a combination of all of them. Which one's better than the other? There's no better chart than the other. They are all They all have valid advantages, and you should, learn about them just to make sure that you're using the full potential of charting here. Okay. On page 7 of the PDF, we already talked about requesting historical data and how you can adjust the data or the historical data on the chart. Let's talk about page number 8, which is changing the style of a symbol. Good. We said that by default, charts will display candlesticks. Very straightforward. A red candle is a down candle, and a green candle is an up candle. Up here on top, you have buttons that allow you to switch between bar chart and candlestick chart. So you should find 2 buttons. So if I click on bar chart, you can see how my bars change to regular open, high, low, close. They're very thin. I like my bars a little thicker. If you want to change the style of these bars, double click on them and you have a style tab. In the style tab, there's a lot of settings here, but I want to look at the weight here. Next to color, I just look at the weight, make it a little bit thicker. If you want to change the color of the open, high, low, close bars, you can do that there. And you can set it as a default if you want to use those settings going forward. Okay, now my bars look a little bit thicker, and I can see if I press my down arrow key on my keyboard, I can compress the bars. Let me change this to 5 minute so we can see a little bit more of history. Go back to open, high, low, close bars, and I can see the chart on the screen. There's another type of, or another style of candlestick that TradeStation provides. We have this button up here. It's called Candlestick with Trend. You can also find the styles of charts if you go to Format Symbol, and you find them here, Style, and you have the types here, Open, High, Low, Close Bar, High, Low, Close Bar. The High, Low, Close Bar, the HLC, does not show the open. So we have OHLC, Open, High, Low, Close, High, Low, Close, Candlestick. We have one that's called Candlestick with Trend. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. Candlestick with Trend is something that TradeStation introduced many years ago. For a long time, it was the default candlestick chart, and for a lot of users, it's a little confusing. A lot of users are used to seeing candlestick this way. You see, this is the regular candlestick: green up candle, red down candle. If I click on this other button, Candlestick with Trend, things change, because right now we're using the concept of hollow and filled. So a hollow candle, one that is empty, is an up candle, and one that is filled is a down candle. So what is the color then on this particular candle? The color is just if the candle closed higher than the previous candle, it's going to be painted green. But if it closed lower than the previous candle, it's going to be painted red. So we're seeing 2 things here. Not only the relationship between the open and the close, which determines if the candle is hollow and filled, but you're also seeing the relationship of one close to the previous close. And that's how they're painted red and green. That is why you see this first candle on the screen of the session. You see how this candle is empty, which means that is an up candle. The price closed higher than it's open. But why is it red? It's red because it's lower than the previous candle up here. There was a drop in price from close to close. So you see a little bit more information by using Candlestick with Trend. If I switch, take a look at what happens to this red candle if I switch over to regular candle. You see, it switches to green. It's a green candle because it's an up candle. So with the other one, it just provides a little bit more information. If I go to Format Symbol one more time, you also have a dot on close. You can see the preview right here below, just a little dot on the close. When we look at multi-data chart, sometimes it's convenient to have one symbol as a dot and the other as a line, just to make them a little bit different, especially if you're overlaying data. We'll take a look at that on Tuesday when we do technical analysis and we demonstrate how to do multi-data charts. And then you have a line on close. Line on close is just a line connecting close to close. And you can see that on the screen as well. So use this. We have a feature here that is, I'm not going to say new because it wasn't released, months ago. It's probably been part of TradeStation for a year. It's a transparency functionality that allows you to change the intensity of indicators and data streams. Comes in very handy if you have a lot of indicators on the chart and you want to play around with the transparency so that they're not all in your face at all times. So you have one that is faint and the other that is very intense. You can do that by playing around with the intensity. If I leave it on candlestick here and I say give me an 80% transparency, when I do click OK, take a look at the candles on my screen. You see how they're transparent? So now I'm able to do other stuff on the chart and not have it feel so cluttered because of the intensity of all the colors, So you have some information about styles of bars right here on page 8 and 9 of the PDF. Let's talk about price scale. Page 10 of the PDF. All right. Let me go back to the intensity that I had earlier. I do see a question here that says, why are some of your candles painted with white top or bottom? If you're referring to the wick, see the wick here is some sort of a white or gray. You can change that. If you format the symbol, you see if I go to the wick color, it's using this gray, but you can change that if you want to make them different. Okay. It doesn't happen on the candlestick with trend. In the candlestick with trend, we have some some candles that are kind of white. That's because the close is the same as the close of the previous candle. Oh, okay. Thank you, Phil. I think yeah, when you click on the candles, you see some little boxes on top of your candles. That just means that the object is selected. It allows you to manage your chart um, easier because sometimes you may want to delete something from the graph. Rather than going through the menus, you can just select it by just clicking on it and pressing delete on the keyboard. It's not going to work here because that's the only thing that's on the chart and the chart cannot be empty. But if you have a lot of things on the chart and you want to remove one, you can just click on it and then press delete. The scale. The scale here on the right hand side, we said it was automatic. See, whatever it finds the highest point and the lowest point, and that sets the scale. As I reduce the bar spacing and new data comes in the graph, you can see how the scale updates again. Let me go over here to Format Symbol. We have a tab dedicated to scaling. There's a lot of features here. Of course, we don't have time to explain every single one, so I'm just going to highlight the ones that are used the most. You can see how the range is set to automatic. Date range on screen. It expands the range to include analysis techniques. So if you put in an indicator that plots a line that is outside of the current range, the range will be adjusted so that it includes those indicators. So this is something that you probably want to have selected. And sometimes if it is an indicator that goes way beyond the scale, you may want to disable it so it doesn't include that indicator. Because I've seen sometimes that there's an indicator that plots a line that is way outside of the current range, and if you leave it as it is, it'll just squash your candles, and it'll look like a flat line. So sometimes you want it on, sometimes you want it off. Just wanted to explain what it does. But some things here. If you look on the right-hand side, my scale is jumping every 50 cents from 52 to 52.50 to 53. If you want to add more details, you can do custom axis increment and say, give me quarters of a point, and then click OK. And now it includes quarters of a point in your scale. there are going to be some limitations. For example, because of space limitations, you're not going to be you're not going to be able to see um, some granularity that does not fit. If I come over here to the scale again and I say I want to see every single penny by putting in 0.01, it's not going to be able to do it. There's no space to show you every single penny. So if I do 1 penny and click OK, it's just going to do its best to show you every single penny, which it can't. If I open up the chart, it'll start giving me details until you're able to see every single penny on the screen, 17, 18, but that only happens if you're able to open the screen further. Okay, but you have the ability to add more prices if you need to do so using a custom axis increment. You have custom decimal places. You have separators, comma separators. Those are convenient when you're looking at volume indicators and so forth. You can set a fixed scale and say, show me Microsoft, but from $50 all the way to $55, and click OK. And notice how the scale is now fixed between 50 and 55. The only problem with having a fixed scale is that if the price moves outside of what your values are, you won't see the bars on the screen. So that's why the default is set to automatic, so that if there's a price swing, it's always going to be included in the chart space. Let's see, what else can I say about the price scale? Here we have a linear and semi-log. Some concepts that may not be very familiar to a lot of you, the way that it calculates the scale here. By default, TradeStation uses linear. What is semi-log then? Let me give you an example. I'm going to cancel out of this so I can change the symbol. Let's take a look at chart of Apple. You can see this is the movement of Apple going back to the late 90s. Okay, so the scale right now is set to linear, which means that if you look at the scale here, the jump in price from $10 to $20 is exactly the same jump that you see here from 100 to 110. But as a trader, you know that the jump from 10 to 20 percentage-wise is not the same as 100 to 110. Apple had to move 100% in order to go from $10 to $20. That's a 100% price movement, as opposed to the movement from 100 to 110. That's just a 10% price increment. So when it comes to semi-log and the way of displaying the scale, this may not be very representative of the way that Apple has moved, because it's allocating the same space movement between 10 and 20 and 100 and 110. So if you want to represent also the percentage movement on the scale, then is when you say, I want to use semi-log. It gives you a little bit more perspective of where the price has been and how much increase percentage-wise there has been. I'm going to come over here to the chart and go to switch it to semi-log. And I'm going to click OK. And there it is. You see how the chart changes completely. Now the movements that we see recently are not so significant as the ones that we see historically, because back in the days when Apple jumped from 10 to 20, that was a major and significant event. That was a 100% movement, as opposed to the movements that are recently happening. So it's very interesting that now we see the movement of Apple in a different perspective, because now the current movements are not as significant as they are in a linear scale. So it's an interesting way of looking at a chart. It's all analysis and allows you to do different analysis. If you're looking at historical data and you see something that has moved a lot, as this particular symbol, Apple. Okay. On page 11, we talk about symbol properties and trading sessions. Let's go ahead and take a look at that a little bit. Symbol properties. Let me change this to ESH 16. futures on a 5-minute. Okay, for those that are trading futures, this is the S&P E-mini futures contract. If I double click on the candles and I go to properties, you're going to find information about the symbol. You find this for stocks, but for stocks it's very straightforward. You know, you have the value is always 1-to-1, but when it comes to futures, a point movement represents a different dollar amount. There's leverage when you trade futures. And you see a value here called the big point value. It tells you what every point movement represents in a dollar amount. Every time the S&P moves 1 point, and 1 point is from 1869 to 1870, that's 1 point, that represents $50. So every futures that you load on TradeStation, you can come to the properties and see what is the value of the movement. I'll give you another example. Let's say that we go to and we look at silver. This is the contract for silver. You can see here on top. If I go to format symbol and properties, I can see that the big point value is 5,000. Silver is currently at 13. If it goes to 14, that is $5,000. That's the leverage of trading a silver contract. So it's interesting information about this particular contract. You get the expiration date, you get the notice date. So come to properties to find out information about a particular symbol. When you're looking at symbols, let's go back to ESH 16, and you're a futures trader, you know that there are continuous symbols. This is a very specific month and a very specific year. This is March 2016. So the life of this contract is not very long. If you want to load historical data, you're gonna want to combine other months and other expirations together. We have the continuous symbols, and continuous symbols in TradeStation have an @ES. So once you do the symbol and you put in the root of the futures contract, that gives you a continuation of prices. So I can create a daily chart and see where the price has been, you know, a couple years back by looking at all these contracts stitched together. This is not a tradable symbol. If you wanted to trade ES, you have to go back to ESH 16. Okay, just wanted to point that out because we have a lot of symbols for futures in order for you to do analysis, especially if you're going to test a strategy. You probably want to do that on a continuous symbol so you can have enough historical data to do a significant or something that is meaningful, a meaningful backtest. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other settings here. Let me go back to a stock and go to 30-minute. This is the 30-minute chart. Let me go to straight candlestick. I believe in one of the classes somebody asked me about pre and post market. The chart by default only gives you regular session. In fact, if I go to format symbol and you see regular session as part of the session, see the session's part of the properties of the symbol, and by default is always set to regular session. But if I come here to the ellipsis, you can modify the sessions and say, I want to use a custom session, not the regular, a custom session. And we have some templates available for you. We don't want to do a 24-hour for stock. We want to do a stock with pre and post market. We have a template already designed for that. In fact, if you select a template, and if you look at the bottom here, it tells you when the pre-market begins. It begins at 8 a.m. all the way to 9:30 a.m. Then you have the regular session from 9:30 to 4, and then you have the post session from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. If you apply this session to your stock, take a look at what happens. We have more session breaks because now it's including the pre and the post market. The intensity of the color also changes. The pre and post market bars are a little darker. May not be so visible on the screen right now. But if I look at the bars of Microsoft right now, the ones that I'm pointing to, this is the bars of the regular session. If I go back a little bit further, these are the bars of the pre-market. This is what happened early in the morning from 8 a.m. to 9:30. If I go back further, this is the activity that happened yesterday post-market. And then I have the regular session yesterday. Then I have the pre-market from yesterday. So it does give you a lot more information on the graph, and you can see where the price has been pre and post-market. This is only available for stocks. There's no pre and post-market concept for futures or Forex. So just wanted to throw that in if you wanted to see the movements of the movement of stocks in those extended hours. If you go back to format symbol and you go back to sessions, you can use any of the templates that are here, but you're welcome to create your own if you wanted to do so. And you can get creative when it comes to sessions and say, well, I only want to see the first hour of the trading day combined with the last hour of the trading day, and create a session that only shows you data between those hours. It's an interesting way of looking at just the first and last hour of the day. But keep in mind that you can create all these sessions, especially if you wanted to extend the pre-market a little bit earlier, because I know that some stocks start trading even as early as 7 a.m. So maybe that's something to think about. Perfect. One last thing that I wanted to show you is the ability to drag the background. As it is right now, if I click on the background and I move my cursor around, I'm only displaying this data tips window for the candle where my vertical axis is. Yeah, it happens all the time. If I click on the candles and I move left and right, that's fine. I can do that. I can drag the candles left and right. If I try to drag them up and down, I cannot. That's only possible if I turn on a feature called background dragging. The button here on the toolbar gives you a shortcut to background dragging. If you right-click on the background, you also get the option to enable background dragging. So it can be turned on both ways. I like the button on top. It's a shortcut. So if I click on it, notice how the cursor changes into a little hand. It allows me to click on the background and move it around. But now I can move it in any direction that I want. It's free movement. I don't get the data tips anymore because I'm in background mode or background move mode. So every time that I click on the background or even on the candles, it's just going to move the candles in any direction that I move them. You can also put your little hand on top of the price scale on the right-hand side and click and drag to expand the scale. And as you expand the scale, you can move the chart around to see more detail. You can do the opposite by just clicking and dragging down if you want to compress the chart even more and see more data. So it's an interesting way of maneuvering through the chart. When you're in background mode, let's say that you're looking at the data and you want to keep the data like this. If you look to the right of the background dragging button, there's a little drop down. So I can click there, and there's two options. Disable and restore original scale range, and the original scale is automatic, or you can disable and maintain the current scale range. If I do maintain, I'm back on showing the data tips and I cannot drag my background, but the scale has been turned to fixed. So if any candle goes outside of this scale that is shown here, you won't see the candles. In fact, if I go back to format symbol and I go to scaling, you can see how it's been set to fixed from 5064 to 5215. So if it moves away from the current scale, you just need to come here and set it to automatic again, and then click OK, and then you're back on square one. Okay. Vincent, your question of why would you change the axis? For many reasons. I mean, especially if you want to change it from linear to semi-log, that's a very interesting way of looking at price movement based on percentage. You can also adjust the price scale to see more detail. You know, sometimes the bars are really small and you want to expand them, it's a great way to just expand the price code to see more detail. Tool, I see your question about displaying crosshairs at all times. By default, you see the arrow, and you click, and you get the data tips. If you go to the drawing menu, notice that you have on the very top, you have a small pointer, you have a large pointer. So if I use a large pointer, the arrow just turns a little bit larger. But if I go back to drawing, you have crosshair pointer. So crosshair just turns your arrow into a crosshair, which has the same functionality. It's just that it gives you a little bit more precision because of the crosshair ability. So you can do that. Joe, your question about the recorded version, yes, this class is being recorded, and we'll make it available at the very end of the series. So sometime at the beginning of February, we should have access to these videos of this class. We already have the classes recorded the previous, time that we delivered the class. Those are available already for you to watch, and you can see another class which sometimes provides you a different perspective or a different piece of content. If you want to view those archives, those videos are listed here. That's the link for the video archives. Let's open the floor to questions about any of the functionality that I have shown today. Let me review here my notes to make sure that I've covered everything and make sure that I didn't skip anything. But if you have any questions about what we covered today, let me know, and I'll go over a little bit over that functionality in more detail. All right. I think I have covered a lot of information here. One thing that I wanted to point out, if you have a chart of the euro dollar or any Forex symbol, if you're a Forex trader, keep in mind that the chart here is built based off the bid information. So all the bars are built based on bid. There's no record of trade activity for Forex. So there's no volume. We don't get a last trade. Although here on the status line you see L for last, the price that you see here, the 1.09500, that is the bid. In fact, let me go ahead and format the window, go to status line, and I'm going to add the ask and the bid. So if you look at the bid, it matches exactly the last. So we're using the bid information or the bid stream to actually build the candles on the chart. If you wanted to see the ask, there's another symbol that you can watch, which is EUR USD.A. It's a variation of the symbol. It has a .A at the very end, but now the chart is built using the ask information. So it becomes very interesting because when you do an analysis, especially if you're doing a strategy backtest, you do have to keep in mind that that strategy is only using one side of the quote, which is the bid. So if you really want to use both, you have another symbol to take a look at, which takes into account the spread between the bid and the ask. Phil, I believe you're asking about how to move the price back on the chart. I think you're talking about scrolling, right? Okay, so the best way, I mean, if the best way is to just use the scroll bar to move back on the chart, and you can see historical data. You can also use page up. See, page up and page down will allow you to scroll faster. Now, if you're a keyboard person and you press page up, it'll just scroll back. Page down, it'll scroll forward. You can do that as well. You can also use the up arrow and down arrow to squeeze more data. So up arrow and down arrow allow you to squeeze and expand. Page up page down to move back and forth. Also, the scroll bar here to move back and forth allows you to do that as well. If you wanted to use, yes, if you wanted to use analysis techniques, I see the what Phil is referring to, analysis techniques that use space to the right. See, by default, there's some space to the right that TradeStation displays here. If you go to Format Window on the General tab, you have a setting for space to the right, which is set to 5 bars. If you don't want any space to the right, let's say that you want this candle to be right next to the price scale, you can just change that to 0, I think. I think it'll take a 0. Yes, it takes a 0. You see how my candles are now pushed against the price scale if you wanted to do that for your charts. But by default, it gives you 5 spaces to the right on the chart. And this allows for indicators that are displaced. If you're using an indicator that displaces over into the future, you may have to add additional bars for calculation. I'm not sure if you're familiar with indicators like the Ichimoku cloud, but that's one of the indicators that projects the plots 26 bars into the future. So you'll need to adjust those days after the last candle. All right. Vincent, I see your message about not getting the important disclosures PDF. Please send me an email and I'll attach that document and send it to you via email. Virgil, your question about what lesson shows drawing tools, we're going to talk about that on lesson number 5, which is on Tuesday. So next lesson is the one that talks about drawing tools and also analysis techniques. My email address, for those that don't have it, jnava@tradestation.com. If you need immediate help, let's say that you're doing something and you need somebody to walk you through the steps. I did say this yesterday, call technical support. They're there not only to fix errors, they're there also to grab your hand and take you step by step on a lot of TradeStation functionality. So if you're doing something and you need somebody to give you a step-by-step guidance, call technical support and they'll help you. You can also email me. The only problem is that I may not be available, immediately. So you may have to wait, a day or two for my response, but that's fine. If you'd rather email me, I'm glad to give you the answers via email. Okay. If there's no, I see your comment, Rose, about not having the scroll bar. If you don't have a scroll bar, it's because you've squeezed all the data in one view. For example, look at my chart right here. I've removed all the space in between bars. I have no scroll bar at the bottom. That's because I'm seeing everything. But if I press my up arrow key and I expand the view, now I get a scroll bar because now I can move my chart back and forth. I believe that's what you're referring to. Vincent, your question about no axis. If you refer to, let's say, for example, that I right-click here on the price axis, you're going to see that there's the, well, it's off the player, but let me show you what that does. I can enable a left axis as well. The options that I see when you right-click on the price axis are display left price axis, display right price axis. So you can have a price axis on either side. Becomes very interesting because now I can disable the right axis and have the bars up against the edge of the chart and have the price axis on the right. I can turn that on, turn the left one off, but no axis means that whatever you're looking at is not attached to a price axis on the screen. If I double click on the candles here and I set my scale on no axis, remember that there's a setting here for no axis, and I click OK, see what happens? The bars are just floating. There's no price axis on the right, which probably is not what you're looking for, but it's an option there if you needed to do so. Sometimes if you're doing multi-data analysis and you're mixing symbols together, you may want to do no access for one of the symbols just so that it displays better. We'll take a look at different examples on Tuesday when we do multi-data analysis. Rose, I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't have scroll bars on the right either, so I'm not really sure. You may want to maybe talk to and discuss this with technical support, or maybe create a new chart and see if the problem continues. Sometimes, starting from scratch solves a lot of the problems. Rob, your question about how to access the previous lessons, we have the archive link. It's available in the documents section. Let me share with everyone again. That's where the archives are. You'll see a version of this class, not this one in particular, but an older version, which is also very, very good. It has a similar content. Okay, perfect. I'm going to end the class right now. It was a great pleasure spending this time with all of you. Remember, lesson number 5 is going to be on Tuesday at 10:30 Eastern. I just want to say also that the room will stay open for the next couple of minutes. So if you have any comments or any questions, feel free to submit them. I'll be here for the next few minutes just to answer the comments and questions in the chat. But for me and everyone else at TradeStation, thank you for attending this class. Have a great holiday weekend and see everyone on Tuesday. Bye-bye, everyone.